Hi, this is Wayne Brown from the Better Dating Academy, moving people from dating disaster to relationship master. Okay, I've created a series of top 10s, which is what we'll be looking at in this video. This is the first of them. And each of the top 10s looks at a separate portion of the journey from where you currently are to being in a high quality relationship that truly serves you. So today's top 10, what we're looking at is a better you. So these are things that can make you a better version of you. And one of the main components of the journey is if you want to attract a better quality partner, become a better quality partner. So these tips will help you to achieve that. Excuse me. Now, each of the tips, I'll talk at a little bit of length at it, give you a little bit of homework, a bit of insight, some of my experiences, but each of them is designed for you to go and explore how you can become a better version of you using these guidelines. Now, the first thing we're going to look at, and they're not necessarily from 1 to 10, they're just 10 things to look at. So the first one you need to be looking at is your relationship values. These are the things that absolutely have to be present in a relationship for you to feel loved and appreciated and encouraged and supported and all of that. So your relationship values are going to be sort of fingerprint specific to you. None of us have exactly the same relationship values. We can find someone who has similar values so that a relationship with them would be relatively easy. It does start with us knowing what we want in a relationship. Now, the good thing about this is it also gives you your deal breakers. So you know that if someone can't meet that value, you shouldn't be with them because it's just going to create too much conflict. And it also allows you to quickly narrow down who you should be with. Now, if you're struggling to know what it is you want in a relationship, what your relationship values are, look at the things that you've had in relationships. If you haven't had a relationship before, look at friendships and interactions with people. Look at the things that you didn't like, the behaviours you didn't like, the attitudes you didn't like, the beliefs you didn't like, and tick them off or cross them off. And what you're going to be left with are the things that you do want in a relationship. So at least you can narrow it down a little bit that way if you're struggling to list what it is you want. But absolutely critical, relationship values form the foundation of the relationship. If these don't match, then the rest of it's going to struggle. These are forming a pillar of support to the rest. So very important for these. Okay, the next one is know your matches and mismatches. So like this lovely couple here that are matching, you need to have things in common. You need to have beliefs that are the same. You need to have values that are the same, attitudes, behaviors, skills, abilities, interests, hobbies. There are things that you need to have the same. You need to have commonalities where you can meet on common ground. If you have too much of these though, and again, everyone's different. Some people like more matches and some people like more mismatches. Again, totally personal, what you prefer. Or we all need some matches. It gives us security. So have a think about the things that you would want in common with your partner. And then you also need to have mismatches. Now, there's a few different types of mismatches. There are mismatches where there are things about yourself that you may not like, things about yourself that you may try and suppress or ignore. Now, a lot of people have this mindset of, oh, it's all got to be positive thinking. You've got to only focus on the positive. And that's crazy because life does have negatives and you don't have to focus on them, but acknowledge that they're there. So acknowledging that you have these so-called negatives makes it easier to deal with them or to learn from or embrace or accept those negatives about yourself. And if your partner has these negatives, then when they exhibit these behaviours or attitudes or values or beliefs, then you get reminded of your own and it reminds you that you need to work on them. So for myself, I had to build these into my partner before I met her. And when I met her, she had them, and I thought, cool, that means I can become a better version of me because she's going to remind me with those behaviours. And also over time, she works on them as well because she realised it doesn't work for her either. And then we become better versions of each other and therefore a better couple. There's also another type of mismatch, which is they need to have things that irritate you. Now, these aren't things that just make you lose your nut, but they have to be things where they grate a little bit. Now, the reason for this, now this is something I came up with, is there is an acknowledged stage in a relationship that a lot of people use. It's the honeymoon period or the rose-coloured glasses period or having the blinkers on period or whatever you want to call it. It's a period where you only focus on people's positives and you ignore the negatives. And because you ignore them down the track, it can cause a problem. So you need to put in both your mismatch, which is where they're giving you the learning opportunity, and also there's just little irritating things. So it's things where you go, oh God, they're doing it again. And you just get a little exasperated, a little annoyed, but it's not a deal breaker. It's a long way from being a deal breaker. So if you build these in and know that your partner has these from the start, you almost eliminate the honeymoon period. So it's still there. You can still embrace all the niceness and have fun, and it can still be shiny and enjoyable, but you know that in the background there's these other things that are waiting and going, don't forget I'm here. And it just reminds you. So you need to know what your matches are and what your mismatches are. So have a think about what your partner would need to have, what their matches are and what their mismatches are, those two sorts. And that'll go a long way to you becoming a better you. So you're embracing those parts of yourself that you suppress, that you disown, that you ignore. And therefore you can become a better you as you deal with them and grow into a better version of you. The next one is learn assertiveness. Now, assertiveness is basically just standing up for yourself. Now, this doesn't mean being aggressive or dominating or trying to override people. Probably the best example I've ever heard was a story I read. I can't remember where I read it, but it beautifully illustrated assertiveness. This couple were having an argument. They'd only recently just moved in together. They were arguing and fighting, and it wasn't pleasant. And the guy suddenly stopped after a couple of minutes, and he walked into the bedroom. And his partner followed him in, and she found him to have pulled a suitcase out and have it on the bed, and he was putting clothes in it. And she said to him, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I respect myself far too much to tolerate this. I'm moving out. And when you can deal with this maturely without the yelling, then we can move back in together." And that snapped her out of it because he was suddenly not wanting to fight the way she wants to fight. And she suddenly realised if she wanted to keep him, she had to do something different. So he asserted his belief, his attitude, his tolerance of what he wanted in a relationship. And she had to accept it because he was assertive. He said, I will not stand for anything less. So assertiveness is using all of these tips that'll help you learn about you and become a better version of you and stand up for those. So assertiveness is just standing up for who you're becoming, what you'll tolerate, what you won't tolerate, just standing firm for you. All right? So learn how to be assertive. Not aggressive, not arrogant, not dominant, not overriding people, not being selfish or self-centered, I should say, because there is a difference, not being self-centered, but learn how to be assertive. All right, the next one is learning how to do anger. A lot of people get raised believing that anger is wrong, that you shouldn't get angry. They end up repressing it. They end up doing it incorrectly. They end up doing aggressive anger or passive anger. And both of these are damaging to relationships. So learning how to do anger effectively. So understanding how to address people so that they know that you're angry, so that you can express that anger, but without damaging either of you. That's really important. I've got a free resource on my website. So if you go to betterdatingacademy.com, click on resources, and there'll be one there on the 3 types of anger, and that'll explain the behaviours that make up aggressive anger, passive anger, and assertive anger, so that you can learn how to do anger properly. So you can look at the attitudes and the behaviours that you might have been using, that other people may be using, and also adopt ones that will allow you to be more effective in doing your anger. And anger is a wonderful emotion. Since I've embraced it, it's been a big contributor to my growing as a person and as a partner. So learning how to do anger, very important. The next tip is a hard one for a lot of people and a bit scary, but it's something you need to do. All right, it's an absolute necessity. The reason is that we attract certain people, situations, and experiences into our life because we need the lesson that they contain. So every person brings with them a little gift that'll help us become a better person if we discover that gift. Obviously, they don't know they've got it because we've attracted that into our lives. And then we look at what we can get from that, and then we've dealt with that and we can let that go. Now, I know I used to attract angry women as partners. And it took me a long time to click until I had a friend who was a counsellor. We did some work together and I got my aha moment, and that's when I realised this. And then I was able to look at all the other situations and what they brought and what I could learn from them so that I could become a better version of me and a better partner. So once I got that, my past became a lot easier to deal with and I was able to let it go. It doesn't have any anchors in me in it at the moment. And you'll also find the same as well. Once you deal with your past, then it's easier to let it go. So look at your past, look at the situations, the people that have come into your life, the commonalities they have, because the commonalities are what will let you know is the gift that they're bringing to you. So deal with your past. Otherwise, it's going to keep recreating. You'll keep attracting the same partners. You'll keep attracting the same people, the same friends. You'll tolerate things that you shouldn't tolerate, the things that clash against your relationship values, this sort of thing. So dealing with your past, absolutely critical. And if you're dealing with your past, the next thing you need to do is to plan your future. This is something that dawned on me many years ago when I was doing my journey, months and months of journey, is that people plan a weekend, they plan a holiday, heck, they even plan their shopping. But very few people sit down and plan a relationship. I spent months, literally months, planning my relationship. I sat down and worked out what I was bringing to the table, what they were going to bring to the table, what the relationship was going to look like, what it was going to feel like, what it was going to sound like. Yes, I even went that far as in words and phrases that were going to be used. I looked deep into planning this. I got very specific, and I have clients when I start encouraging them to do this, they go, aren't I being too picky? And I say, no, unless you have a clear picture of what you want, you've got very little chance of getting that. If you're just vague and you say, well, I want a partner that's human, it's way too vague and you're not going to end up with what you want. Yeah, you may not get everything on the list, but that's all right. As long as you get the majority of the stuff near the top of the list, your relationship's going to be a good relationship. But you need to understand what you're moving toward. Like you can fine tune as you go along, but you have to have a direction you're moving in. So plan your future, not just your relationship, but all aspects of your life. At least have an idea of where you're heading. So this made a huge difference to me, planning my future, especially my future relationship. So sit down and think about what it is you want in a relationship. Now, this one is the big why. Know your whys. Why am I with this person? Why did I keep attracting these people in my life? why do I keep doing this particular behavior, that is giving me this result that I don't like? Dig into your whys. And the other good thing about whys is it doesn't just apply to your past, it also applies to your future. Why am I doing this? Why am I using this particular behavior still? Why am I looking for this particular person? If you have a big enough why, that can become your motivator. I know there's times when I've struggled in the past where I had motivation, lack of motivation, I had fear that was overcoming me. And if I thought about my why, and I've got two of them, my two big whys, they snapped me out of it. Because the moment I thought about it, and I remember my coach that helped me discover these, he saw me struggling, he'd just come up and whisper one of my two whys in my ear, or both of them, and suddenly I'd go, oh, that's right, that's why I'm doing this. So it's a wonderful motivator as well as a wonderful clarifier about things. All right, so a lot of the times you'll ask the question, you won't get the answer straight away, but it'll sit in your unconscious or your subconscious if you prefer, and these things will pop up. If you're not thinking about them, your unconscious is, your subconscious is. It's doing all the work while you're not conscious. You're living your life. So think about your whys and your big why. So a really good question. Little kids ask all the time, why? And it's brilliant. It makes you look for your motivators, the things that drive you. So yeah, really good. Look at your whys, the big whys. The next one, ask yourself some questions. Now, once you start asking yourself for your whys, you're going to have the other questions, the whats and the whos and the whens and the wheres. And the quality of your questions will determine the quality of your answers. If you ask really good questions, you'll get really good answers. And don't be scared to face the answers either, because once you address a lot of them, your life becomes so much easier, so much better. So ask yourself some questions. When you ask a why did I attract that person into my life? Once you ask that one, for example, dealing with your past, you can ask yourself some other questions like, what was it specifically that attracted me to that person? What was the reason I attracted them into my life? Who did they represent? Where did I bring in behaviours that didn't serve either of us? So really start to ask more of those sorts of questions. Really dig deep, but get creative with your questions. The more creative you are with your questions, the more creative your answers will be. So really start to ask yourself some questions. The next one, be comfortable with failure. All successful people will tell you they have failed lots. And they embrace the failure because failure is a learning experience. We get taught from a young age that failure is wrong. You have to get it right. At school, they teach you, you have to get this right. And that's sad that we only focus on that and we get so uncomfortable with failure. But embrace failure. Failure is a wonderful learning experience. I've failed lots of times. And once I started looking back on that failure and getting the lesson that I needed to, my relationships took a leap forward. My mindset took a massive leap forward. My sense of well-being, of peace, of clarity, of everything took a massive leap forward once I got comfortable with failure. So this top tip, get comfortable with failure. It's okay. Embrace it. Doesn't mean you have to accept it, but embrace it. Know that it's going to be there. Regardless, you're going to fail at some point. You're going to, when you approach people, you're going to get rejected occasionally. But the more you go, okay, this is a learning experience where I can embrace what's happened and learn from it so I can be better, then failure is not so scary. I remember when I went out and I spoke to over 170 women in 7 weeks to find my wife, that I got rejected a couple of times near the start. And when I actually stopped and looked at the situation, it was like, okay, where did I go wrong? Okay, I approached those women at a wrong angle. It would have come across as threatening. My body language wasn't good. I didn't ask good opening questions. And there were times where I didn't actually get rejected, but I could see that it wasn't going as well as it could. So the more I looked at the so-called failure, the more I learned from it, the more I embraced it, and the more I could become more effective as a person, as a partner, and as a human being. So failure is a natural part of life. Embrace it, learn from it, and become a better version of you. Okay, the final one. Be responsible. Now, this one was a huge one for me. I was at a talk by Jim Rohn, and he was writing up on the board, and this was a massive turning point for me once I fully got this. It did take a while for it to sink in, as it sometimes does, but once I got it, I got it. And he drew a line on the board, and he wrote beneath it the word victim. And he said, okay, what's the mentality of victims? And we were all yelling out phrases like they blame others, they're always angry. And we kept throwing out all these phrases, and he wrote them down. And then he wrote the word victor above the line. And he said, okay, what's the mindset of a victor? And we yelled out all these phrases about victors. They're driven, they're positive, they accept responsibility. And he said the major contributing factor for both of these is their attitude to who's responsible. A victim blames everyone else. And when they're blaming everyone else, that means that the locus of control is on other people. In other words, they're controlling where you're going. You're in the boat going, I don't want to go over there. And they're at the rudder going, no, you've given me control of the rudder. He said victors, they accept responsibility. That doesn't mean they take all the blame and they don't feel guilty. It means they're responsible. They look at the situation and they say, this is what I contributed. This is how I helped create this situation or this experience or this belief. So once they acknowledge that they have contributed to that, then they realize that they're more in control of what's in the future. And I know for me, this was big. Once I realized it was me contributing to all of it, then I could contribute to my future, and I became more and more in control of my future. And now I know I'm 100% in control, and it makes a huge difference to my peace of mind and everything. So be responsible. Look at situations where, as if you're looking through a security camera. So you're looking at that situation, you take out all the emotions, and you go, okay, what attitudes, what behaviours, what words did I use that contributed to that situation? How could I have handled it better? Okay, so be responsible, fine tune it, become a better version of you. So really, really big learning point for me, this one with Jim Rohn. So the top 10 tips, just to give a quick summary, is discover your relationship values. These are your deal breakers, the things that absolutely have to be present in a relationship. Know your matches and your mismatches, the things where you have to have things in common and where you have things that mismatch. So they are parts of you that you disown, suppress, and also things that your partner would do that irritate you so that you can minimize the honeymoon period. Still enjoy it, but you can minimize it. It's not so shiny, shiny. Learn assertiveness. Stand up for yourself. Learn how to do anger properly. Download that little PDF from my website and look at the behaviours of people in those 3 different types of anger and try and learn some of the more assertive anger parts. Deal with your past. Okay, there's wonderful learning experiences if you get them. Plan your future. Sit there and map a path. You can fine tune it as you go along, but have an idea of where you're going. Know your whys. So these are your motivators. These are the reasons for everything, why you did things in the past and why you're doing things in the future. Ask yourself some deeper probing questions to find out the answers. Better quality questions means better quality answers. Be comfortable with failure. Failure is going to happen, whether you like it or not. If you want to try and ignore it, it's still going to be there tapping you on the shoulder. So be comfortable with failure and know that it gives you wonderful learning experiences. And also be responsible. You've been responsible for it in the past, and you're responsible for it from now on. So embrace that fact that you're contributing to it and take more control. So these are the top 10 tips for a better you. Go out and explore these, have fun with them, really dig deep and think about these. Now, like I said, I took months pondering a lot of these, literally months. And once I had the clarity, the journey forward became a lot easier. So all of these tips, looking at different aspects along the way. This is for the start. This is the beginning. If you ignore this one and only do the rest of them, you're going to struggle, because all of this is a foundation. You're the commonality in the relationship, in the dating, everything. Get that commonality right. The rest of it has to improve. Do these 10, become a better you. Even if this is the only top 10 you do that I offer, you will become a better version of you, even just looking at these. So have fun with them. We'll catch you on the next top 10 and have a great one. Bye.